did I teach you?
You are Duke of New York. You're A number one.
I can't hear you.
You are the Duke of New York. You're A number one.
Peace, everybody. Can everybody hear me? If so, please type it into the chat. Can you hear me? Peace, peace. Hope everybody's well. Excellent. Excellent. Striving to navigate this system, you know what I'm saying? I hope everybody's been well, inshallah. Anybody have any questions about anything before we get started? Word, a lot of stuff going on, of course. I strive to, stay as abreast of as many things as possible. Shorter Sanders drops fifth round, 144, then starts buck dancing. Yes, that's what he's been bred to do. That's what the coloreds like. Do you think the black pope will get elected? He was supposed to get elected 2 popes ago, actually. When the guy, I forget that guy's name, but he was the guy before Ratzinger. When that guy left, he used to be the black pope, that guy, whoever that guy's name was. And then he became pope. Then I think they poisoned him. He died. And then they got Ratzinger in there. But Ratzinger was the first like full Nazi pope. You know what I mean? And so who was also Jewish. So he was the first one in that. So eventually they had to get him out because they was about to expose the whole thing with him and what his role was in a lot of stuff during the World War II stuff. So they got him out, and then they got in Bergoglio. But Bergoglio, again, was a first because he was the first confirmed Jesuit to become Pope, which is really a forbidden thing. Even amongst the demonic hosts, they never really wanted that. That's why he came in and just did away with everything else that was going on, because they believe as Jesuit, like in order to be a Jesuit, you have to of a certain stature. You want to get in, you got to be of what they call the fourth vow. So as a fourth vow Jesuit, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Is the thing in the back? No sound? Can you hear me? Y'all hear me, right? I be bugging. Okay. So from that perspective, they created a power vacuum in which he had to get out of there. Once Bergoglio got in order for you to be a Jesuit of a certain caliber, you got to take the fourth vow. The fourth vow is to the Pope that you'll murder people for the Pope, unalive children for the Pope, sacrifice people for the Pope, do whatever you got to do for the Pope. That's what you got to do to be down with that. So you can't go from taking a vow to do that for the Pope and then be the Pope. You dig? So that's the problem. So you could look up the fourth vow for the Jesuit fourth vow yourself to see why these people should be or used to be ran away out of every society that they ever came in contact with. You know what I mean? And it's only due to the corruption of weak and greedy men that they were able to actually get anywhere in the world anyway. Because remember, the whole Jesuit order was started out of spite due to the voracious hatred that Ignatius Loyola had for the Moors. And because he didn't thing with the Moors like that, even though he was part Moorish, being a so-called mulatto, he, always hated that part of himself because he could never partake of it because his father allegedly was a high nobleman Moor, but his mother was like a purchased slave out of Saleh. So him being Catholic and growing up in the monastery and all that, being molested by the dirty priests and stuff, it gave him a really hard outlook. So in creating the Society of Jesus the way that he did, he used it as the Pope as the justification on the eternal wars against the Moors that has persisted to this day. So anybody like Georgetown, anybody like North Carolina, anybody like the Tar Heels, anybody like um um what's Maryland? What's Maryland's team? Football team. The football team from Maryland. Yeah, the Ravens, see? All of that's Jesuit. All of that's Jesuit money. The Blue Devils, yes. Chapel Hill, Duke, all of that is Jesuit money. St. John's, St. John's Hopkins, anything with Saint in it. St. John's comes from the St. John's Indians. The St. John's Indians were the original people whose city these people destroyed to create Georgetown University and all of these universities that these devils sit on right now. You understand? The St. John's Indians were the first Moors that they converted in that area, who themselves at the time were Lenabe and Sagamore. This is facts. And then those converted St. John's Indians, because they were now in league with the church and now brought under the Catholic jurisdiction, they had to then foresee 10% of their lands to the church. You see what I'm saying? Which then abrogated their relationship with the king and the surrounding territories that wasn't down with that shit. And then this is where the Indian Wars and all this shit come from. So you see what I'm saying? The Jesuits themselves have always just been there to destroy Moorish harmony wherever they found it, up until this day. So Bergoglio being a thing, remember, he also was indicted and found guilty by a criminal in International Criminal Court of Justice. Him and the Swedish princess, or the princess of Sweden, or queen of Sweden, for human trafficking and satanic ritual abuse and child sacrifice and all that. He was found guilty with all of that. He got red notices in certain countries. That's why you see amongst certain celebrities and these types of people will have ankle monitors and shit on them, because they be going to different jurisdictions where they got cases in, and in order to show that they are in good standing with the court, they agree to be monitored. You understand? It just don't be televised like that. That's the secret court. Just like they got like secret Starbucks and secret um, gas stations and shit like that under Hollywood and places like that. They have a whole secret economy going on with that we're just now becoming aware of. So that's why all of that's going down. So the fact that he died right after Easter Monday, he technically is the last pope, technically. However, if they're going to go by the ritual, they're probably going to get a melanated one in there because of the whole what do you call it? Because of the whole begin as you start shit, you know what I mean? And how you begin stuff. So because it started with Constantine, melanated one, who technically was the first pope, technically. They want to end it with a melanated person. So this guy, Turk's son, that they want to use, this African they want to use, he is a special case because he was the understudy to the black pope prior to Ratzinger, the dude I was telling you about, Hans von Kovenbach. He was his number two. And then his name is Turk's son, right? Which is Moore's son, right? So ritualistically, if they're trying to pin this as the apocalypse pope, then it would be good. Just like in the movie Deep Impact, you didn't realize Morgan Freeman was the president until they addressed him as that. And it was basically he's presiding over the end of the world. That's the scenario that they want to make this, basically go out with a bang and put it all on this name. So because the Africans worship the white God above all their own, you know what I'm saying? It could be a likely occurrence, you know what I mean? We'll see. But essentially, everything that's happening is the controlled demolition of the present or old system that all of these BPGs and the rest of these people said that they wanted to actually see get up out of here. So now that it's getting up out of here, everybody getting nervous because if the grip, the white man is gone, let's say he gets defeated in that, then who the real enemies now that's been using the white man as this cover for the past what in our case I would say 1,553 years. In the immediate genetic sense, let's say about 238, 250 years. In the genetic sense, let's say about 600, about 6,000, about 600 years, you know what I mean, that it took to graft them to get to this point. Because remember, now all Caucasians, as much as y'all want to hate them and stuff like that, now all of them were grafted in the way that you have been taught through the Yakub theory and all of that stuff. You know what I'm saying? A lot of them have been, not all of them are like that. When you look at the graph that they have on the pyramid of one of these Egyptian places, the one where they got the separation, where they show like the Nubian and he's mad dark, and then they show like the foot, which is the Phoenician, and he's like light skinned, and then you got the Hamite who's dark skinned, and then you got the white boy who's listed as a Tamahu. There you go, Jay. You already know. I remember back in the days when I got my first copy of Golden Age of the Moor, and I was reading that section about them, and when it got to that part where it said in the Tamahu means Tama means people, and then Tam means people, and then Mahu means created. So the Tamahu are the created white people. I remember I just read that, and then I started to try to find footnote references to that in the same book, but they didn't really have it. So when I started searching other places and started reading other stuff, I read the Innu and Lish, and they had a section of the people they called the Tam, right, in there, and they were basically like a created, genetically altered people. So that Tamahu type is the type that was created out of, whereas the Neanderthal type, you know what I'm saying, is, thank you, brother. Brother Dan. Dan says the Temple of Abydos. See, he's more as a sharp. Um, they get to the point where they get that out, and so distinction, you know what I mean, between them and that, because they want us to believe that white people evolved from black people who actually went up into Europe, and through centuries and centuries of being there, they eventually became light skinned. This is how they trying to say that. If that's the case, then how come you don't see none of that shit now? You know what I mean? What about the polar tribe they found in the Arctic? See, that's the other thing I was telling you about the Arctic. Why this nigga want Greenland? Because Greenland is connected by tectonic plate to the Antarctic, like directly. You know, where you can go through all of the passages and stuff that's there to get to Antarctica, with basically circumventing the whole situation that they got with the treaty thing, which is why it's becoming a big thing. You've been hearing everybody talking about the Arctic and going to Antarctica and shit. You did. So because they've been doing that, they've been prepping people. But what's happened recently is that in order to throw off certain people's agenda, they done released a serial killer in the Arctic. Now, I remember this movie back in the days called The Thing with Kurt Russell. And it was basically that with an alien. So in real life now, at least they saying it's real life, they are saying that they having some heavy violence happening up in Antarctica, and they can't get the people out. But this dude done went crazy, and he's going straight Jason on niggas up there. So that alone shows you that not only are they going through some sort of internal war or whatever within themselves, the isolation that they have created around the thing has created almost a apathy around anything and Antarctic to a degree. Like, think about it. These people done revealed that they got aliens. They done reveal who killed Kennedy. They done reveal they got time machines now. All the shit we've been saying that everybody's saying we was crazy for over the past however many years we've been out here with this. But This is what they're saying. Now they're all coming out every other day and telling you shit like this. To the point where people don't even care. You hear what I'm saying? People don't even care. Yes, we have time machines and we've been using time manipulation on things. So when I say then that y'all niggas be trying to change things through tachyon interference and quantum redress theory, y'all trying to say that we're making shit up. But this is it. So you got Freddy Krueger in Antarctica trying to kill all these people. Greenland, a certain portion of Greenland, actually wants to become part of the United States. Think about that. Just like a certain element of Canada, which is now Alberta, is trying to come under the fiefdom of that. Because remember, Charles is about to die. King Charles is about to be up out of here, bro. Once he's up out of here, the end of the monarchy is in thing. You think William is going to be able to lead like a full war? Something's going to break out. William, Harry, these niggas is going to be the face of the country to move the country forward? No. So what they've done in Britain, or what Charles has basically done, is basically promised Britain to the Arabs. He's basically going to allow them to turn Britain into a position of the Sultanate. So the Muslim Brotherhood Sultanate, right, is all of the so-called terrorist Arab organizations actually having dominion and sway over what they're referring to as the New World Order, with the religion of Sunni Islam mainly to be the justification for it. You understand? They got over like I said, go and check the records on who is running England right now. And you'll see that they have about like every major township or parish or whatever the hell they call it, commonwealth, whatever they little hamlet, whatever them niggas call it, shit, whatever that stuff is, they got a almost 90% Muslim rate, meaning that all of the mayors now, all of the governors, they all Sunni Muslims. That's how they invade. You dig? That's how they take control of the whole shebang. You know what I'm saying? They do it by infiltration through government, which is what they were doing here until your boy came in and got it all shut down. You see? That's the problem. Your boy came in and messed the whole thing up the first time. So they did everything they could do to mess it up, right, in the interim. And then now that he back in there and shutting everything down, it's literally destroying the infrastructure that they've made and been building up since the fall of the what do you call it? Since the first stock market crash. So the generational debt that has been incurred is slowly, whether you believe it or not, or know it or not, actively getting paid off right now. You gotta look on the national debt clock and look what's going on. Like, it's kind of bugged out. And because they don't want to tell people any of this, you see, they gotta still go with the main narrative of this fake civil war that they themselves initiated. You know? So the best thing to do is not get caught up in that, but to understand what's going on enough to be educated enough to know what you're giving your energy to and what you're not, because this is how they get people caught up in their little searches and their little extremist groups and all the shit they be staging to get people caught up like it's real, but it's really not. You know what I mean? The realest part of it is the truth that it's not real. So the stuff that is real is the stuff that you actually see happening. So what you see happening is people bugging out because their jobs, specifically in government, people that you were never elected, right? Who've had lifetime positions due to them being traitors to the country, due to them creating false information to get you and your family killed. These are the people that they want you to rally behind and saying, well, the people that's in there now is that. But you got to remember, they worked so hard to make this person a villain. They forgot that America loves villains. America loves villains, yo. They love them. Everybody loves Darth Vader. You know what I'm saying? Everybody loves Skeletor. Everybody loves Al Capone. You understand? You understand? These are straight psychopathic killers. You understand? But people love what? People love. You know how much money Jason has made from the first time he stabbed somebody on film to now? Just Jason. You understand? So we love killing so much that they don't even have to really have a good story for Jason. Jason just got to be in it. and you just got to kill people in a way that's entertaining for you. You know? So all they got to do, so think about it, all they really got to do, they don't even really got to come up with a story. They just got to come up with interesting ways to kill people on screen. And this is entertainment. You understand? You see you see where we at? You understand what I'm really saying? Like, this is what's really going on. It's not us. We have been inundated with this, but because they created the circumstance for this to happen, they are now responsible for the outcome. And they don't have any way to push back because historically now, all of the slave narrative, Africa narrative is being rejected. The way that these Africans and these people is acting, it definitely is not helping their case. To act like we're the same people. We're not. We're culturally very different, and there's nothing wrong with that. We should celebrate that aspect of it. Oh, the Zulu.
EIN for the trust. You give them the EIN to the trust, the name of the trust. They'll do it for you. So the past.
Brother just popped in real quick. They created a circumstance in which all of that became rushed, and now they got to go with the circumstance that they presented everybody, that they are on the right side, but they've already showed that they're perpetually not. You understand? So it's over. So when one lie crumbles, the whole thing starts unraveling, and now all of the truth is starting to come out. Not only about so-called Moors always being here, but the fact that the transatlantic slave trade can only be related to those Slavs who were transported across the Atlantic. You understand? It can't be you, because those ships wasn't crossing the Atlantic directly back then. And even now, you right now try to get in a oil tanker. Just type in oil tankers crossing the Atlantic, and you tell me that these niggas was in these little fake European boats that they show us and was crossing with niggas in the bottom of these ships, and everybody turned up okay and not dead by the time they got there. As much as they show that they was raping slaves and throwing them overboard, and they're like, okay, I get it. These were the prisoners of war, and this is what you was doing as the spoils. And maybe you had a certain quota that you had to meet, so you could get rid of some of them like that. But why would you want to get rid of, if it's all about the money, why would you go to that degree of dehumanization of the product? Because it wasn't just about the money. It was about dehumanizing and purposely putting the air of rapine in the bloodline of those Moors, that first generation of Moors that grew up after the fall of everything. Because we're more related to them, actually, if you think about it, than the ones who were really running stuff at its prime at the fall of the time, let's say 70 AD, if we're going by the calendar. We more related to the ones that fell, which is why we still in a fallen state. Because that's the closest time to us, because this shit just happened in the 1800s. You understand what I'm saying? They got us thinking all of this antebellum South shit and all of that. And yes, it was like that, but it was reversed and inverted. So with the death of Pope Francis, right, and the ultimate death of King Charles, they're looking at this as now the death of the Western satanic rule, right? Which means then if that devil that they are serving, that they are referring to as Lucifer, remember now all of them serve the same version of this thing. Ultimately, it's evil, but not all of them call it by what it is. That's why even within those initiate orders that these people are in, they have their own within that own that then is building with them on what they want to see happen with that. So they could be, so like a Jesuit will be a Zoroastrian, will be a Muslim, will be a Christian, will be whatever. Why? Because that's how the Jesuits were taught. Who basically taught the Jesuits? Or Ignatius Loyola specifically. However, by the time of the old man of the mountain, the father of the Hashashim, the Assassins, he then was employed to learn under him. And he's the one that taught him all of the mind control and how to infiltrate and how to, cipher information, how to pimp holes, how to do anything to set up your mark to get them. And then all of that was transferred over. So finally, within the three-headed beast, right, or the three-headed hydra, which would represent the black pope, the gray pope, and the white pope, they also represent the three Jews, Jubilo, Jubilah, Jubilam, right? Because remember, at one point, the Freemasons was almost wiped out by the Catholic Church, right? And these Moorish Catholics, right, who are Romans, who had defeated their Muslim cousins in them, had wanted their order to be the only order, and thus outlawed it, and then put that edict out for hundreds of years. That's how the Illuminati got blown up by Weishaupt and them. That's how they started the anti-Masonic party in America, by another party called the Know Nothings, which was basically a Gnostic political party that was based on an earlier Moorish, or let's say American Indian political party called the False Face Society, a derivative of the Kituwa Society. So it always comes back to them emulating some stuff that we already did, and then them acting like they doing something new. You know what I'm saying? So this dude here, he's the Great Pope. See, he got the pale horse on his tie. Like everybody knows this. That's why it's not really a thing like that. Like everybody knows he's the Great Pope. Everybody knows. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just what it is. Like that's what he do. He run these niggas, and he's the one who is the direct link between them and the families above him. Those are the papal bloodline families that we talked about, that Bergoglio is a part of through the Farnese line, just like Castro is a part of through the Farnese line. All of these guys, what's his name? Pancho Villa, one of these, not Pancho Villa, Simon Bolivar, like all of these dudes, they can trace their lineage back to the Farnese. Once you trace it to the Farnese, right, you then trace it directly back to the Persians. So this is really all Persians and Zoroastrians and shit. Understand? That used Rome, used Islam, used the Hebrews, the Jews specifically, to create subgroups that would eventually allow them to have power. Because remember, at the close of the old world, when everybody was in ruins, the Persians came and said that we'll give everybody in the world, we'll come and rebuild all of your temples, because the world had been destroyed and everything up to that point. And Persia came out on top, or Persis, or Pars, or Paris. All of that is the same place. And they all got together, right? And the keys to do that fell on them. So they created the world's first universal constitution. Basically said everybody in the world had the right to have free religion and that they would pay for everybody to build. And so they did that. They put in work, and people came to them. Who specifically came to them was the so-called Yehudas, who were now trying to rebuild the temple that would eventually get knocked down by 70 AD, right? But regardless, they paid to do it, but they didn't have the bread. They didn't have the architect. Persia didn't have the architects anymore. But who had the architects were the Egyptians. These Egyptians at this time were more like Phoenician in a sense, and more like traditional Moors today. So this is how we can show and prove that again, that the Moors was around and doing all these things at these different time periods. Now, when they talk about Europeans and all of that, they want to talk about Romans and look at us like we're crazy when we talk about that these people were melanated and all of that. So I had one Caucasian dude, show me all of these Hellenistic pictures and talk to me about the Hellenists and Hellenists. It's like, bro, man, like if you don't agree with it, cool. If you want to come up with all of these modern pictures of these so-called white Romans that existed, but cool. But don't get mad at me because we done found the original statue pictures and stuff of what these Romans and Minoans and Etruscans and these people look like. So when we talk about European, again, up until the late 1800s, 1900s, we're talking about melanated people in mass who are being uprooted and by their own governments. See what I'm saying? That are still trying to carry on this war of expulsion against all of the rest of their Moorish people. Yes, Europa itself, named after the Carthaginian goddess next to Dido, who helped set up Carthage. So this eternal perpetual war against these Moors, like I said, were against these people that you're seeing right here, who I guess were the Moors of their day, right? So here's a Roman, right, made out of agate, right, with locks. Here go another brother from Cyprus, right, Minoan, Cyprus priest, 600. And then here go another bronze lady of Iberia, i.e. Spain, right, 100 AD. Like, what are you not saying? Right? This is at the same time now that all of the pictures and TV shows that we've been watching with these Roman people or whatever is always Caucasian people, to the point where they believe it so much themselves that they are always looking to the later periods when those didn't even happen, really. Remember, these people are the product of a created history that was given to them at the close of the last epoch that wasn't that long ago. The precursor to the actual Roman Republic, right? Before it was Rome itself, were or are a people they refer to as the Etruscan, right? These Etruscans, again, based upon their culture and how they acted, how they dressed, what they was dealing with, were very attuned to the ancient world and how it was structured in terms of the cosmology, the technology, and all of that. These were the pre-Latin speakers. And as you see, they depicted themselves as they were. No culture is going into a place and trying to make the statues of everybody look like other people. You understand? And so the Vatican itself is built on top of Mount Vatica. Mount Vatica, or Vatica, was one of the early queens of the so-called Etruscan people who, in the process of her dying, allegedly became a goddess, in which she then received worship. She became a goddess of the dead. And thus the hill that she allegedly died and ascended into the underworld or upper world to became known as Mount Vatica. Mount Vatica was then taken over after the so-called Reconstruction and given over to the Roman Catholics, who then built on top of all of the ancient bodies of the ancient Etruscan nobles in them that had died and then had given their bones to that. So when you see the Vatican today, That's why there's so many catacombs and it goes down so far. Because it literally goes back to the pre-cataclysm, like 3-4 cataclysms ago. You understand? So all of those bones and stuff that you see elaborated and stacked in those ornate ways and stuff, that is how they were able to harness the energy from the dead. Just because they was melanated don't necessarily mean that they was good people. They were still pagan savages. They were still psychopaths in terms of today's standard. But what they were able to do was unify and take over provisions and get people to adopt their way. You understand? That's what made Rome successful. Is that after the conquering and the annihilation, people would eventually submit because they wouldn't stop. Because they were always using the people they conquered against the new people they were conquering. Sound familiar? You know what I'm saying? Exactly. And one of the ways that they waged war against people was that when shit got too much and the people of the day wanted too much liberty, they would then start to create laws to make it harder for those people to live, while then bring in other people from other provinces and give them what they know they should have been given to people who were the natural citizens. See what I'm saying? Why would they do this? Because they're trying to create a new voting bloc, right? To then literally purge out the last 5 generations that were there prior to that. Which is why the educational system in the different countries switches up every 5 to 10 years. Remember when they was teaching that fake math to kids to make them more stupid and all of that in the days leading up to the Biden administration taking over? Remember all of that? Yeah. So this history has a bearing on us today because we are still mind controlled and looking at this perpetual white man bad situation that's creating a false amnesia on us, while then also creating an attraction force to them. When it didn't happen like that. Publius Virgilius Maro, also known as Virgil, the great Latin poet Virgil, holding a volume on which is written the Aeneid, right? Which is a copy of the what you call it, of the ancient Egyptian work, right? On the Neteru. On either side stand 2 muses, Clio, representing history, and Melopomene, who is tragedy. The mosaic, which dates to the 3rd century BC, was discovered at Hadramentium in Salsate in Tunisia. See? And is now on display at the Bardo Museum in Tunis, Tunisia. So Virgil, the poet Virgil, right? Just like the Virgil that you had in this era, Virgil, right? Who everybody knows was melanated. Everybody knows was so-called African or Afrius, right? So he was the only one. So everybody else was a slave except these few people. That's how it worked. See how they pick and choose? They just be picking and choosing who they want. But everybody of merit and notation in the historical context mostly was melanated people. Just whitewashed. I mean, they even did it with the movie World Trade Center with Nicolas Cage. The character in that he's playing in real life was actually a melanated man who did all of that. So why not give the movie? Why not make Carl Weathers the hero and all that? Why? Because at the time, everybody was talking about how it was an inside job, and everybody knew that the white man and the Jews and these people was behind it, allegedly, and they needed to get good press. So they took this black man's story and just put Nicolas Cage face on it. You know what I mean? Like, so if they do that with him, remember, they all would paint their faces to play Othello, remember? All these people all around the world was like this. It's just now that it's coming out, it's harder for them to hold on to power. And so Bergoglio was doing a humiliation ritual tour where he was traveling around the world kissing black men's feet and shit like that all the time. Remember that? I remember that when he was out there, always on the ground, bowing and washing prisoners' feet and all this other shit. Yeah, that's all humiliation ritual for him. That's why he was the one who was chosen to open the six gates. Then at the same time, they come out with this movie Conclave. Now, what's funny is Conclave, I saw that back in 2024. So it's crazy they just coming out with it now, you know what I'm saying, on TV when I've been seeing it. And what makes that movie crazy is in that movie, the Pope, when they go through the conclave, they're going for an African. They was about to choose the African, but they caught the African up on some Shannon Sharp shit. You caught him in the movie. They catch him up on some Shannon Sharp shit, so he get disqualified. And then they choose this Jesus type character, nigga. And then they come to find out he a trans. So they wind up inadvertently electing the first trans pope. You see what I'm saying? And they're gonna wonder why this movie gonna bomb. They're gonna wonder why. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I was a Catholic, I'd be offended. But at the same time, how can you? Look what y'all nigga. Look who y'all was condoning. This nigga just gave away the church. This nigga was bringing, before he died, he was bringing other gods into the Vatican and saying that they equal to the God that y'all worship, who was Mary and you know, all of these other entities. Meanwhile, this nigga hooking up, trying to shine up to the Muslims, because he know that they're gonna use them, the Arab Sunni Muslims, as the push to bring about the mark of the beast and all that type of shit. Because they are brother, because they are Esau too. They are Ashkenazim too. Within 40 years, we went from the jet black Lord of the Atlas, El Glawi Pasha, the Lord of the Atlas, the Grand Bey, the Black Panther, right, to what you seeing right now. Why? Because it was regime change and then they bleached it out because that was the custom of the dirty Moors. That's what the sinner thing was. And seeing that, I was like, oh, okay. This makes sense. Their name was literally Moor. They were the Moor twins. Right? But to really understand their relationship, which was great, but you saw in it, they basically are the manifestation again of what you would read about the hero twins, which is an ancient tale of the ancient Moors here in America, i.e. Olmecs and them, that you can read and stuff like the Popo Vow. That some say is been too minorly updated to be taken as a reference, but I don't think so. Like, you're really looking at it for the allegorical meaning in the story anyway. So, but yeah, the hero twins, you know what I'm saying? All of that. But in that, they're one person, you know, the whole hoodoo thing. All of this is reminding you that you used to be free. And where was they at? Chicago. Right? They had just come from Chicago with all of this money working with Capone. Who was making all of the laws and all of that friendly for black people at that time in that movie? The Prophet. In that time period. And so in seeing it, how they projected it, I thought it was okay. You notice he had them, one had on the blue for the Blue Lodge, the other one had on the maroon for the Moors or the Shriner. See what I'm saying? One wound up, they both dirty Moors, but then one wound up being cursed to be with the white devil forever. as an immortal, while the other one went into the astral realm with the original woman, right? Who represented Tawaret. If we're looking at this in an Egyptian context, that's why you saw breastfeeding at the end. Tawaret being the hippo goddess. And that's not to be an insult. That's like she's the mother goddess of all the goddesses, which then make him Jeb, right? The earth god, which is why he fell to the earth when he finally died, right? Which is why he was always bending down, touching the earth and shit, because that's Jeb, right? So he went back to meet Tuareg at the end, but then she now became Nut, the sky goddess. That's why she looked up at the sky at the end, right? And then they wound up disappearing. And then we find out at the end that he wound up living in hell. One went to heaven, one went to hell. Yeah. And the baby is who? Heru, right? But the purpose of it was, in my opinion, was to show that everybody was born in sin, right? But sin mean moon, and sin mean the senior wave. Remember I kept telling y'all? The senior wave, which is the frequency, which is the music that enticed Lucifer to fall from heaven. That's why you saw the nigga just appear on fire. You understand? Because that's what devils do. They just appear. Ghosts appear. Apparitions appear. And so in appearing, you create the circumstance for